Binondo, 1920. Here, 100 years ago, men of courage and vision founded China Bank to help a community of struggling but worthy merchants and traders achieve their dreams. They were driven by an impeccable code of trust and respect through the hard times and the good times. That's how China Bank successfully partnered with 5 generations of loyal clients. Today, China Bank keeps pace with evolving technology while remaining grounded on integrity and prudence. China Bank, celebrating the past, embracing the future.
Times change, but values remain.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 2020 Annual Stockholders Meeting of China Banking Corporation, being conducted via live stream. May I introduce the members of the Board of Directors joining us today, headed by Chairman Hans C., Vice Chairman Gilbert D., President William Wang, Mr. Peter D., Mr. Joaquin D., Mr. Herbert C., Mr. Harley C., Mr. Jose Xio, and our independent directors, Mr. Alberto Yao, Ms. Margarita San Juan, and Mr. Philip Chai. Also joining us virtually is advisor to the board and former president and chairman of China Bank Savings, Mr. Ricardo Chua. Also with us are members of the China Bank management, including our Chief Operating Officer, Romeo Uyan Jr., and Chief Finance Officer, Patrick Cheng. Ladies and gentlemen, may I turn over the floor to the Chairman of the Board of China Banking Corporation, Mr. Hans T. C.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Because of the current circumstances, today's annual meeting of stockholders is an online-only event, a first in your bank's 100-year history. Joining us in this meeting are your board members, President William Wang, Lead Independent Director and Audit Committee Chairman Alberto Yao, and Independent Director and Corporate Governance Committee Chairman Mr. Philip Chai, our Board Advisor Mr. Rick Chua, Corporate Secretary Attorney Corazon Morando, Investors Relation Group Head Alexander Escucha, and representative of our external auditor SGV and Company are also present. I will now be calling the meeting to order. Madam Secretary, have we sent the required notice of meeting?
Good afternoon. Yes, Mr. Chairman. We have notified our stockholders about this meeting in accordance with the Securities and Exchange Commission Memorandum Circular Number 6, Series of 2020, Section 49 of the Revised Corporation Code, and SEC notice dated April 20, 2020 on the alternative mode of distributing documents in connection with the holding of Annual Stockholders Meeting for 2020. We have likewise advised the Monetary Board of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas of the stockholders meeting via remote control. We have published the notice of today's meeting in the Philippine Star and Philippine Daily Inquirer in print and online formats on May 26 and 28, 2020. Further, electronic copies of our information statement and management report, as well as our annual report, are available in our website and in the Philippine Stock Exchange EDGE submission system.
Do we have a quorum, Madam Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I certify to the existence of a quorum for this meeting. Based on record, out of a total number of 2,685,899,812 subscribed and outstanding shares, the holders of 2,109,466,438 shares, or 78.539%, are present by proxy through remote communication or in absentia. Such number represents more than 2/3 of the outstanding capital stock of the bank. The final count of attendees will be reflected in our minutes.
Next item in our agenda is the approval of the minutes of 2019 Annual Stockholders Meeting. Do we have the proposed resolution and results voting for this agenda item, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, the minutes of the annual meeting of stockholders on May 2, 2019 can be accessed through a bank's website. The summary of matters taken up in the meeting are included in the definitive information statement. For this item in the agenda, Mr. Chairman, the adoption of the resolution flashed on the screen is being proposed in order to approve the minutes for all intents and purposes. On the votes cast, 100% of the shares represented in the meeting voted in favor of the resolution. Therefore, Mr. Chairman, the resolution is approved.
The next item in the agenda is the annual report to provide information about your bank's activities, financial performances, and other relevant data for the year 2019. May I now request our bank president, Mr. William Wong, to deliver his report.
Chairman Hansi, Vice Chairman Gilbert D., fellow directors, stockholders, my fellow China bankers, good afternoon. 2019 was a momentous year for China Bank that marked the end of another remarkable decade and ushered the next phase of our journey, China Bank's 100th year. As proud and excited as we are about the milestone of the bank's centenary this year, our collective consciousness has been focused on the COVID-19 pandemic and its far-reaching health, social, and economic impact. Throughout the various states of community quarantines, we focused on business continuity, the safety and well-being of our employees and customers, and with the proactive support from the monetary and regulatory authorities to partly cushion the impact of the disruption of economic activity. To start off with our operating environment, global economic growth in 2019 slowed to 2.9% from 3.6% in 2018, its weakest pace since the global financial crisis a decade ago. The Philippines' GDP growth likewise decelerated to 6% in 2019 from 6.3% in 2018, mainly due to the delay in infrastructure spending. Amid the slowdown in 2019, we built on growth momentum of the past 3 years and set new record highs. China Bank continued to grow to a customer base of 1.7 million, served through 631 branches and 1,002 ATMs. We posted a net income of 10.1 billion for a significant increase of 24%. This reflected a return of equity of 11% and return on assets of 1.1%. Net interest income was 14% to 26.1 billion, while non-interest income grew 49% to 8.4 billion. Despite the 13% increase in operating expense to 20.3 billion, our cost-to-income ratio improved to 59% from 63% because of higher operating income. Assets grew 11% to 962 billion, of which 569 billion was accounted for by our own loan portfolio, up 12%. This was funded by total deposits of 775 billion, of which grew 7%. We ended 2019 with 96 billion in capital, up 9%. 2019 saw a number of corporate milestones, including our 30 billion maiden retail bonds issue. 6 times oversubscribed, it was one of the largest bond issuance for the year. We also issued our first green bond of $150 million to IFC. Our investment grade credit rating of Baa2 was affirmed by Moody's. We also began the restoration of our original head office in Binondo, built in 1924. With consistent profit growth driven by stable core recurring income, we are able to provide satisfactory returns to our shareholders. In 2019, we paid a total of 2.4 billion cash dividends, 6% higher than in 2018. The COVID-19 pandemic is a global economic disruption on a scale not seen in over 100 years. For the Philippines, the latest estimate of the BSP is a 2% to 3.4% decline in GDP in 2020. In the first quarter of the year, GDP contracted to 0.2%, and in May, inflation slowed to 2.1%, while the PSE closed at 5,800. Now we move on to our first quarter 2020 performance. First of all, we continue to support our customers' banking needs. Our loans continue to grow even during the lockdown periods through May. Similarly, our deposits grew during the same period. Second, we continue to be profitable. Our net income increased 19% to 2.2 billion in quarter one. This translated to a return on equity of 9.2% and a return on assets of 0.9%. Net interest income grew 34% to 7.9 billion as net interest margin improved to 3.82% from 3.32%. Operating expenses increased 22% to 5.8 billion as we provided for COVID-19 related expenses. Despite the scaled down branch operations during ECQ, our total assets expanded 10% to 984 billion. Net loans grew 15% to 584 billion. Deposits rose 9% to 785 billion. Non-performing loan ratio remains stable at 1.7%. We increased provisions by 51% with corresponding NPL cover of 109%. We intend to provide more for provisions in the coming quarters in anticipation of possible higher credit losses arising from the stoppage of economic activities in many key sectors of the economy. Total capital stood at 97 billion, with capital ratios well above regulatory levels. One of the reasons for China Bank's resilience is our commitment to conducting our business ethically and responsibly, for which we have been recognized with awards of excellence in corporate governance and customer service. In 2019, we received the 4-hour recognition from the Institute of Corporate Directors. China Bank was the only bank among the 6 listed companies awarded in this category. China Bank has been consistently recognized for best practice in corporate governance. In 2018, the ASEAN Capital Markets Forum named China Bank as one of the top 50 listed companies in Southeast Asia. We also received from the BSP an award for the best corporate governance, disclosure, and transparency. And for the second year in a row, the Pagtugon Award for Universal and Commercial Banks for our quick responses to customer complaints. Allow me to take this opportunity to honor a valued member of our board. Director Angeline Ann H. Wang, our 4th independent director, was elected during the 2019 Annual Stockholders Meeting. We were deeply saddened by her passing April 11. Despite being on the boards of China Bank Savings, and China Bank Securities for less than a year, she made meaningful contributions in board proceedings, especially on credit matters and issues of accountability. Director Angie is a real loss to China Bank and to the community, and she will be greatly missed. Our hearts go out to her husband Benny and her family. On our centennial year, we are committed to remain a sustainable bank, capable of doing more good now and in the future. We are focusing our efforts on 4 priority areas: growth of business, operational excellence, customer centricity, and employee engagement. We are navigating the new normal with everyone's safety in mind and with the recalibrated strategies and contingency plans to adapt to current constraints and market conditions. In place are team rotation, work schedules, work from home arrangements, mandatory and health and safety measures, and case management protocols. During the ECQ, we ensured the well-being of China bankers throughout adjusted banking hours. Logistical support for frontliners, HMO coverage for COVID-related treatment, continued payment of full salaries and benefits, and financial assistance for agency personnel, among others. For our customers, we ensured that our branches remained open, extended loan and credit card payments, waived certain fees for bank transfers and remittances, and other measures to ease consumer pain. As we encourage our customers to safely bank from home during the ECQ, e-channel transactions surged, particularly China Bank mobile app. From January to May, China Bank mobile app users increased 83% and transactions more than doubled. we are continuously strengthening our cybersecurity accordingly. Leveraging technology and ensuring all enhancements increasingly translate into seamless, innovative banking services will shape the next 100 years of our progress. We are truly grateful to our frontliners in the branches and the skeletal force in our operating and supporting units who made possible for us to service our customer requirements during the various stages of community quarantine. On behalf of China Bank's Board of Directors and leadership team, we thank you, our shareholders and customers, for your continued trust and patronage. It is our privilege and ongoing mission to help businesses succeed and make a positive difference in the lives of the people and communities we serve. Thank you, stay safe, and stay hopeful.
Thank you, William. Madam Secretary, may we have the proposed resolutions on this item and voting results?
Mr. Chairman, the adoption of the resolution is on the screen. And we are proposing the approval of the annual report. On the votes cast, 99.95% of the shares represented in this meeting voted in favor of the resolution. The resolution is therefore approved.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let us now proceed to the next item in the agenda. Audited financial statements for the year ended December 31, 2019. In his annual report earlier, President William Wong has presented the financial performance and changes in the financial position of the bank for the year 2019. Madam Secretary.
For this item in the agenda, Mr. Chairman, the adoption of the resolution flashed on the screen is being proposed in order to approve the 2019 financial statements. On the voting results, Mr. Chairman, 99.95% of the shares represented in this meeting voted in favor of the resolution and is therefore approved.
The next item in the agenda is the ratification of all acts of the Board of Directors, Executive Committee, other committees, and management. Madam Secretary, do we have the proposed resolution and the voting results for this matter?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. The proposed resolution for the stockholders to ratify all acts of the Board of Directors, Executive Committee, other committees, and management during the year 2019 and immediately preceding the stockholders meeting, including the ratification of related party transactions, is flashed on the screen. On the voting results, Mr. Chairman, 99.87% of the shares represented in this meeting voted for the adoption of the proposed resolution. Therefore, the resolution is approved.
The next order of business is the election of the members of Board of Directors for 2020 to 2021. Independent Director and Chairman of the Corporate Governance Committee, Mr. Philip Chai, will announce the nomination.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Based on the determination by the Nominations and Corporate Governance Committees and as confirmed by the Board of Directors, the following nominees for directors and independent directors were found to possess all the qualifications and none of the disqualifications of a director or independent director, and their capabilities are aligned with the bank's strategic directions. The nominees for director are Mr. Hans T.C., Mr. Gilbert U.D., Mr. William C. Huang, Mr. Peter S.D., Mr. Joaquin T.D., Mr. Herbert T.C., Mr. Harley T.C., Mr. Jose T. Shaw, and the nominees for independent director are Mr. Alberto S. Yao, Ms. Margarita L. San Juan, and yours truly, Philip S. L. Tsai. Mr. Chairman, our amended Articles of Incorporation and amended bylaws provide for 12 directors. However, only 11 directors are nominated at this time, as independent director Angeline Ann H. Wong passed away on April 11, 2020. The present quarantine conditions have effectively prevented the conduct of a meaningful and thorough search for a suitable candidate for independent director. This search will commence as soon as conditions allow, and the Nominations and Corporate Governance Committees will nominate an appropriate candidate for independent director at the proper time for the approval of the board and ratification by the stockholders at the next stockholders meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Philip. Before we proceed with the result of the election, let me take this opportunity to thank Ms. Angeline Ann Wong for having provided a strong element of independence and the objectivity in the board, and having given invaluable insights on credit risk, account and relationship management. She was elected to the board in 2019 and was the chairperson of the nomination committee. She was also an independent director of China Bank Savings Inc. and China Bank Securities Corporation. On behalf of the board, I extend my deep gratitude and sincere condolences to her family. Madam Secretary, may we have the result of the election?
Mr. Chairman, for the ensuing year, based on the tally of votes as confirmed by our transfer agent, Stock Transfer Service Inc. and CC Gores Pelayo and Company, the independent party tasked to count and validate the votes at today's meeting, the 11 nominees enumerated by the chairman of the Corporate Governance Committee and also listed in the definitive information statement are declared duly elected directors. The percentage of votes garnered by each director based on the number of shares represented in this meeting are shown on the screen. The total election votes amounted to 100%. Mr. Chairman, the proposed resolution also authorizes the Board of Directors to its nomination and corporate governance committees to continue the search for the 12th director, who will also be the 4th independent director of the board, and upon determination of the proper qualification, to be elected to the board subject to ratification by the stockholders at the next stockholders meeting.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Let us continue with the next item in the agenda. The next item in the agenda is appointment of external auditor. May I ask Mr. Alberto Yao, Independent Director and Chairman of Audit Committee, to make the recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Audit Committee evaluated the performance during the past year of the bank's present external auditor, CC Gores Pelayo and Company, and found it to be satisfactory. The committee, therefore, as well as the board of directors, agreed to endorse the appointment of CC Gores Pelayo and Company as the bank external auditor for the ensuing year.
Thank you, Mr. Alberto. I will now ask our secretary to present the proposed resolution on this item and the voting result.
Mr. Chairman, the adoption of the resolution flashed on the screen is being proposed relative to the appointment of the external auditor. On the voting results, Mr. Chairman, 100% of the shares represented in this meeting voted in favor of the resolution. The resolution is approved.
The next order of business is the amendment of bylaws. In a special meeting on March 25, 2020, your board approved the amendment of the bylaws of the bank. May we have the proposed resolution and the voting results, Madam Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, the proposed amended bylaws is for purposes of adopting and clarifying the processes and practice of the company, and also to comply with the requirements of the revised Corporation Code of the Philippines and the Bangko Sentral Philippines Manual of Regulations for Bank. The comparative table of amendments is included in the Schedule A of the definitive information statement of the bank. Key amendments include, among others, the following: to allow voting through remote communication and electronic voting in absentia, enumerating the corporate officers, including the appointment of a compliance officer, to allow the counting of stockholders voting through remote communication or in absentia for the purposes of quorum, and to allow notice via email. The adoption of the resolution flashed on the screen is being proposed relative to the matter. On the results of the voting, Mr. Chairman, 99.91% of the shares represented in this meeting and 78.47% of the total outstanding shares voted in favor of the resolution. The resolution is approved.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. Before we proceed, I'm glad to announce that your Board of Directors, in a meeting held earlier today, approved a cash dividend in the total peso amount of 2.7 billion pesos from 2.4 billion pesos last year, representing 1 peso per share. Further, your board approved to set and/or recommend July 3, 2020 as the record date and July 17, 2020 as a payment or issuance of the cash dividend, and to delegate the President the authority to change the set date as may be required to comply with the regulatory requirements. We will now address the question and answers and comments from our stockholders sent via email. As mentioned in the guidelines of participation in this meeting, which was posted in the bank's website, any questions or comments submitted and received but not addressed during this live stream shall be answered directly by email to our stockholders concerned. I now give the floor to our Head of Investors and Corporate Relation Group, Mr. Alex Escucha, who will read aloud the questions and comments together with the names of the stockholders who sent them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have questions from 4 stockholders. The first stockholder actually has 3 questions, Dr. Genevieve Wang. But however, her first 2 questions were already answered on the financial performance of the bank for the first quarter. And her second question about cash dividends was also addressed with just the declaration of the 1 peso per share cash dividend. So her next question is, how has the COVID-19 pandemic affected the bank's business?
Mr. William, can you answer that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Wang, for that question. First of all, the COVID-19 pandemic has affected the whole world in epic proportions, from the ordinary person to all kinds of industry. It's affecting the way we conduct our business with our clients and also with our own employees. Foremost is our concern for the safety of our employees. The bank has taken steps to ensure that they are properly protected by giving face masks and face shields. We formed a task force to monitor cases of infection across the bank and ensure that they are taken care of. We kickstarted our business continuity program, which essentially identified key departments that handle the backbone of the bank. We then split this into 2 separate sections, separated them in different locations. In case one team gets infected, we still have another team to continue. This skeletal force worked around the clock, and we provided hotel accommodations and meals and shuttle service to and from their residences if needed. For the rest of the workforce, we mandated them to stay at home and continued paying their salaries without deducting their leaves. On the business side, needless to say, it has slowed down considerably, especially during the first few months. And your bank has taken steps by increasing loan loss provisions for possible higher credit losses. And we will continue to do this as we see fit. Even after this exercise, your bank will remain with a strong and healthy balance sheet.
Thank you, President William. The second stockholder to send the question is Mr. Manuel C. How is the bank preparing for the so-called new normal? And how are you preparing to make sure that depositors, clients, and employees are safe?
Thank you, Mr. C, for the question. As mentioned in my report, we comply with the Department of Health Safety, Health and Sanitation protocols in all our premises. We take temperature checks for everyone entering our premises, including placing disinfectants like alcohol for everyone to use. We've installed plastic and acrylic covers for our frontliners. Because of social distancing, we recognize the need for some of our workforce to work from home. At the same time, we are strengthening our cybersecurity infrastructure, not only for our internal operations, but also for our clients who should feel safe doing business with us in the digital space.
Thank you, sir. Our third stockholder to send the question is Ms. Marilyn Yu Cheng Kang. Her question is, how is the bank helping clients whose businesses were disrupted by the pandemic?
Thank you, Marilyn, for the question. We comply with government's initiative of the Bayanihan Act in response to the pandemic, such as granting of grace period for payments of loans from all our borrowing clients. We have taken a proactive step in reviewing our loan portfolio and identifying those industries that are more affected during this pandemic and studying ways to ease the burden of payments.
Thank you, Mr. President. Our fourth stockholder to send the question is Attorney Bernard Tan. His question, are you planning to continue expanding your branch network? And how are you responding to the increased demand for digital banking services?
Thank you, Attorney Tan. For the first question, we are completing our branch expansion program this year using the remaining branch licenses we acquired from the Planters Bank acquisition. We will see what happens next year. But we still believe that bricks and mortar is still an important channel, especially in the provinces when you have a wide population of unbanked. However, we also recognize a segment of the market that demands digital products and services, which brings me to your second question. In support of BSP's financial inclusion program, we have organized a digital banking office to spearhead this initiative. We are among the first banks to participate in InstaPay, among the first to adopt the QR code, and the first to launch RFID loading in our mobile app, and the beep card reloading in our ATMs. These are just the beginning, and we will continue expanding our platforms in due time.
Thank you, Mr. President. In fact, I am pleased to share that we have been receiving customer feedback and my own personal experience that because of the feature in our mobile app, it is actually possible to send money to friends and relatives who don't even have a bank account or an ATM card by just sending them a text message with a code. And this has been very helpful to people, especially during the lockdown. That concludes our question and answer question. As the chairman has indicated, we will reply by email to all other questions directly to our stockholders whose questions were sent in the email addresses flashed on the screen. May I now turn over the floor back to the chairman.
Thank you, Alex. If there are no more matters to be taken up, this meeting is adjourned. Again, on behalf of the Board of Directors and Management of China Bank, we express our gratitude to all those who participated in today's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for your continued support.